Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I just invite you to consider those words for the next few moments as we move into this time of quietness, this time of prayer and meditation, and this time of reflection. So let's begin by getting comfortable. Taking a deep, refreshing breath. Completely relaxing the body. And then more importantly, set a conscious intention to slow the mind down. Just temporarily setting aside all of the busyness and all of the activities of the day. Being open, receptive, and responsive to that still small voice that resides at the very core of our being. And for the next few moments, as we enter into a time of sacred silence, just allow that still small voice to provide you with whatever is necessary to make this day and each successive day a great day. So one more time, just a deep, refreshing breath. And relax. And be still. In the quietness, we are reminded that despite all of the external noise, there is a peace, there is a harmony, there's an underlying body of good that underlies our world, keeps us all on point and on focus. It reminds us that the only thing that matters is the Spirit of God in us, through us, and all around us. We give thanks. In the name and through the nature of the living Christ. And so it is. Amen.
All right. Morning again, everyone. All right. When I was growing up, I used to love watching TV, and two of my favorite TV shows were Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie. And everybody remember those two shows? And I loved them for two reasons. The first one is I had the biggest crush on Elizabeth Montgomery ever, and Barbara Eden. And the second reason I loved it is because they both had these magical powers by either twinkling their nose or blinking their eyes that they could make things better. Problems would disappear, mistakes would get corrected, bad things would become good, and things would work out well. And even though it wasn't real, and I knew it wasn't real, and everybody, if you remember watching it, how many people have ever wished you could blink your eyes, twinkle your nose, and things would get better? Or how many of you at least wish that life could be easier and things would fall into place, you'd be happier? You know, we all wish things would be better. We always wish things would be different. Kind of reminds me of this couple who was married for 30 years, and they were celebrating the husband's 60th birthday, and during the party, a fairy came up and said, because you've been such a wonderful and amazing couple, that I'd give you each a wish. And the wife said, well, we've been poor for all these years, and we haven't been able to see the world, so I wish we could travel all over the world. And poof, she had in her hands 2 tickets to travel all around the world. And next, the husband's wish came, and he paused for a second. He said, you know, I'd really like to be married to a woman 30 years younger. And poof, he was 90 years old. So, be careful what you wish for. I think that's the point. And the fact is, many of us, we spend our lives wishing that life was different. We spend a lot of energy wishing, especially that people were different. We don't even realize it, but sometimes we wish, you know, someone in our lives would be a better listener, or wish they would do what we want them to do, or wish they were more romantic, or wish they were more loving, or wish they could get a job, or wish they would keep a job, or wish all these different things we wish that people were. I mean, I bet every single one of us has someone in our lives, maybe someone at work, that you wish that were a little different than the way they are. Maybe you have a family member that you wish was a little different than they are, or maybe a partner. And the fact is, we spend a lot of time as human beings wishing things were different, wishing people were different. In the last few weeks, we've been looking at a series called Mastering Life. And I'll tell you, one of the ways not to master life is to wish life was different and to wish people were different. It's one of the ways, it not only wastes energy, but it actually creates more frustration and unhappiness in our own lives. So today we're in week 3 of our 9-week series called Mastering Life. And it's a series grounded on that life doesn't work by wishing it to be better. Life works by being aware of the truth principles, the governing spiritual laws of how life works, and being awakened and aware to them, and by practicing and embodying them and mastering ourselves and mastering these principles is how we develop a more happy and fulfilling life. So we're using the book This Life is Joy by Roger Teal, who's the spiritual leader of the Mile High Church in Denver. And in it, for the whole example of mastering life, he uses this story about this man, and he had a fulfilling life, but he felt that something was empty, and he wanted to pursue something deeper, and he found out about this sage, and he went to the sage and said he wanted to go a little deeper, and she said, well, I'm going to put you in a challenging situation that you'll have to find your way out, and it's going to cause you to approach your life in a way you hadn't done before. And so she touches him, and he goes into this cave, and he's dropped in there, and it's kind of dark, and he starts looking for his way, how to get out. And he's trying harder, and every day, and some food appears, and day after day, he's just lost and trying to get out, working harder. And then after several weeks, his fingers are bloody, he's tired, things aren't working, and as dark as the cave is, he gets the darkness in him. It starts flaring up. He gets angry, hates God, he hates the sage, he hates himself for agreeing to this stupid agreement. And then he just gives up and flops on the ground and gives up. And it is finally in that moment of giving up flat on his face that he finally feels some peace. And so he closes his eyes and he meditates, and he starts feeling a sense of light. He starts feeling more expanded, that the light in him began to grow, and the darkness of the cave got smaller. And he realized an illusion was he thought he was in the cave, but the truth is the cave was really in him. That what was really stopping him was not the cave itself, but his approach, his aggressive, angry approach to try and solve and overcome that situation. And he realized that the more he expanded himself, the smaller the cave situation got, and that really mastering life is about being more masterful in our relationship with whatever we think is stopping us or holding us back from being happy and fulfilled. And so some of the illusions or the caves that we put ourselves in are some ideas that are so limiting, that are keeping us trapped. And the first one that we learned in week 1 is we have this idea that there's not enough love in our lives and not enough love in the world. But the truth is that we live and move and have our being in God, and God is love. So we live and move and have our very being in love. That there's love all around us, that everything in life represents some expression of God's love. That love is all around us and within us. We think we've got to search for it and find people's approval and to seek it out and earn it when it's already been here all along. You know, another illusion is we think that we're flawed and we aren't good enough, when the truth is we are all beings of light. We identify ourselves with our weaknesses and our mistakes rather than the truth of our spiritual nature. Last week we looked at the illusion that we sometimes think that life is just a matter of luck when it's really not luck at all. There's a law of cause and effect, and the ideas and the thoughts that we put out in the world really reflect back to us. So if we don't like what isn't working in our lives, there's no point in complaining. We could actually just change the cause to create a greater and new effect. That we have ideas and thoughts that we can bring forth and change whatever isn't working in our lives. And so today, we're going to look at how do we handle relationships and how do we handle situations in our lives that aren't going as well as we want to create more joy and fulfillment. I once saw a Ziggy cartoon, and Ziggy is standing there opening up and looking at the stars, and he says, "I love life. It's just the people I can't stand." How many people ever feel like that some days? And the fact is, I truly believe that the greatest fulfillment and love and joy and happiness we could ever experience comes through loving relationships. It comes through feeling connected and supported, a sense of belonging in our relationships. I believe the greatest joys come through relationships, and I also believe the greatest pain and hurt and disappointment come through our relationships as well. Every one of us has people in our lives that we love and adore, people that inspire us, people that we click with so well we can read their thoughts. We have a sense of connection. We laugh together and feel joy. And we probably have people in our lives that challenge us, that irritate us, that we find that might be a little too pushy or bossy. We probably have people in our lives that we love and care about greatly, but we just can't seem to connect. You just can't seem to have a good conversation with them. We have people of all different situations and connections in our lives. And the truth is, every single one of us, whether we understand it or not, no matter what we do, every one of us, we're in the people business. Because life is about relationships. Life is about how we deal and interact with people. That is the thing that makes life fulfilling or frustrating, is how we interact and engage with people. There are people everywhere. You can't get away from them. So we have to learn what is the way that we can create more fulfilling relationships in our lives. The truth is, without relationships and people, we couldn't learn the depth of love. We couldn't learn about compassion. You can't learn about forgiveness or generosity or service or kindness without people. People are there actually to help us. They are a key aspect of our spiritual growth. They are here to expand and to grow and to learn and discover greater depths of who we really are. And as challenging as relationships can be, the thing that makes it the most challenging, Roger Teal says, is because that we live in illusion that we are separate from each other. That this is me and you are not me. This is us and they are not us. That I am here and you are there. You know, that some people, are good and some are bad. We label people. You're Republican, you're Democrat. You're Christian, you're Muslim. You're important, you're unimportant. You're the haves or have not. You're in or you're out. And he says that what happens is that while we think we're trying to understand life by creating these boundaries, what happens is we create a lot of misunderstanding and mistrust. We create fear where we withhold and keep ourselves separate, and it creates, things like racism and prejudice. It creates war. It creates violence. When you look at the amount of money that human beings spend protecting ourselves from each other with locks and alarms, security systems. To go to a basketball game, we all have to go through metal detectors. I mean, when you really look at it, we have created such boundaries, and he says it's to the point that most of our human suffering is based on the boundaries and separation we've created about each other and the levels of distrust and fear and anxiety. My first time that the idea came for me of that we created separation was I was watching the Phil Donahue show. Anybody remember the Phil Donahue show? So I'm a kid. I'm like 10 years old or 11 years old, and they had Christian ministers, priests, and they were saying, if you don't accept Jesus Christ as your personal Savior, you're going to hell. My grandfather was Hindu. My dad was a Hindu. People in my family were Hindus and Muslims and Christians, and for the first time, it was like, wow, my grandfather's going to hell because he wasn't born a Christian? And for me, that didn't make sense. And I was a Presbyterian, and it made no sense to me. And so sometimes we create these divisions and separations that create a lot of conflict. And the truth is, the higher truth, that's the illusion that we've all created. But the higher truth is that we are all one. That every one of us is created in the image and likeness of God. We all come from one source. The different doesn't mean that we're not the same. Here's a fabulous level of scripture in Corinthians, and listen to the beauty of this. It's for we are all baptized by one Spirit so as to form one body, whether Jews or Gentiles, slave or free, we were all given to drink of one Spirit. Even so, the body is not made up of one part, but of many. Now, if the foot should say, because I am not a hand, I don't belong to the body, it would not, for that reason, stop being a part of the body. If the ear should say, because I am not an eye, I do not belong to the body, it would not for that reason stop being a part of the body. If the whole body were just an eye, where would the sense of hearing be? If the whole body were an ear, where would the sense of smell be? But in fact, God has placed the parts in the body, every one of them, just as he wanted them to be. They were all one part. If we were all one part, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts and one body. There's more. And I wasn't going to read because it's long, but let me read it because it's good. It says, the eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you. And the head cannot say to the feet, I don't need you. On the contrary, those parts of the body that seem weaker are indispensable. And parts that we think are less honorable, we treat with special honor. And the parts that are unpresentable, we are treated with special modesty. While the presentable parts need no special treatment. But God has put the body together, giving greater honor to parts that lacked, so that there should be no division in the body, but its parts should have equal concern for each other. If one part suffers, every part suffers. If one part is honored, every part rejoices with it. It's a long scripture, but it says a beautiful thing. That we are all unique, but we're all part of the same whole. That when one suffers, we all suffer. When one is honored, we are all honored. And this idea of division and separation is an illusion that causes us suffering and pain. And I'm not just talking about different religions and different people from different countries. I'm talking within relationships. We create ideas of separation and different that causes us to think it's okay to hurt one another. And that's not okay because we are all one. We are absolutely all one, all created in the image and likeness of God. We are not so different. We are actually much more alike. And mastering life means recognizing our uniqueness while honoring our oneness. Think of someone in your life you're not getting along with as well as you'd like. And we think to ourselves the truth. This person wants to be loved just like me. This person is a child of God just like me. This person wants to be happy just like me. This person deserves a second chance just like me. Because we are all one. Different and unique, yet spiritually we are one. We are connected. And just changing that shift and focus, even in the midst of a situation of difficulty and conflict, will change and open our hearts to feel a greater connection. Second important thing to understand about relationships, that everybody in your life is meant to be in your life. It is not some divine error or godly mistake. I hate to break it to you, but you were born into the right family. Everybody in your life is exactly who needs to be in your life for the furthering of your soul's growth and your development. That everyone is there for a reason, to give you a gift, to give you a blessing, to help grow you, and to have you become more of who you came here to be. And then the third thing is, you are fully responsible for every relationship in your life. And we can choose to check out of them and neglect them or take them for granted, or we can choose to show up and be more conscious. And if we are indeed responsible, then we need to ask ourselves, and aware that we're one and that we're here to teach each other, we need to ask ourselves, think of that person in your life that you're having a challenge with. What is the lesson that they're here to teach me? What is this person here to help me see that I'm not seeing? To own that I'm not owning? And to change and transform what needs to be changed and transformed in me. I bet every single one of us has had people in our lives who have pressed our buttons, who have made us uncomfortable. Some who we've had to stand up to, some we've had to step back from. I had somebody in my life that would show up and they would be very intimidating. They would act very superior. And I used to hate and dislike and want to resist that person until I realized that they were just triggering a part in me that felt unworthy, that felt that I wasn't good enough. And it took years and time. But over time, the same words that the person said that used to trigger me years ago, hear them now, they don't even make a difference. In fact, we're closer and more joyful than I ever thought was even possible. Because I realized it wasn't about them. It was triggering stuff in me that I needed to deal with, that I needed to heal, that I needed to expand and grow into. Relationships aren't easy. But one of the great things that makes it harder is this illusion that we're separate. And the truth is, we're all parts of the same one whole. That we are all one, not different, but we are one and the same. People in our lives who are challenging us are just like us. That everyone in our life is there for an important reason. And we have the responsibility to do the inner work in us, not change them, but figure out what it is we need to learn and heal. And as we do, that will actually change, transform, and improve the relationship. Second thing in life that we sometimes resist are things that aren't working well. And sometimes when either things aren't working well or we'd like some goal that isn't currently in our life, we try every way possible to create a better life. And whether it's through education or hard work or talent or skill or being determined and aggressive or being charming or manipulative or seeking approval or playing games or lying or intimidating or begging, we're all trying to make our lives better. And sometimes when we think of being masterful, we think of being powerful and being dominated and forceful and making things happen. And there is a power, a creative ability to move our lives further beyond challenging situations and to achieve our goals that we never think of. And it is the incredible spiritual power of surrender. And I can tell by that exciting look on all of your faces how inspired you are by that. And the fact is, every one of us thinks being masterful is about being powerful, but sometimes the greatest strength in our lives is actually learning how to let go. How to surrender. Our culture is taught to hold on hold on, hang on, and hold on tight. Sometimes we spend so much time resisting and fighting and pretending, that we actually stop the flow in creation of peace and attracting the very things that we want. One of the greatest spiritual skills we can learn is to ask ourselves, what do I need to let go? To ask ourselves, what am I resisting and what am I holding on to that is time for me to release? Surrender gets a bad rap. It is in the family of letting go. It seems weak. It seems passive. It seems soft. It feels like you're not motivated or driven. And we've taught to be motivated and driven. And yet letting go is not about giving up. It is about giving way to something greater, something more powerful. And so how willing are you to utilize this great power of surrender and to release and to let go, to lift your life to a higher level of mastery? There was a guy that was really strong and powerful. He wanted to be the most powerful guy in the land. And he was a strong warrior, and he heard that there was someone else he thought was more powerful, some sage up on some mountain. So the warrior climbs with his sword, and he goes up to this mountain, and he sees this little guy sitting there that they think so powerful. And the warrior comes up with his blade over the little guy's head, and he says, "I am so powerful. Don't you know I could split you in half without blinking an eye?" And the little guy looks up and he says, "Yes. And do you know that I'm powerful enough to let you do it without blinking an eye?" And the big guy drops to his knees and cries and worships at the feet of the little guy. Surrendering is more powerful than we realize. The letting go and releasing actually opens a path for love, for peace, for wisdom, and creativity. Here are 3 important ways we can use the law of surrender and letting go. Number 1 is to let go of our emotional hurts and pains. We do 2 things with pain. We either stuff it, and pretend and deny it, or we keep reliving it and keep speaking it over and over again. And either way doesn't help because we need to release it. And it's simple to release the hurt and pain is to acknowledge it, feel it, and let it go to God. In 1 Peter it says this, it says, "Cast all your cares upon God, for he cares." Or another scripture I like is, "Come to me all who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest." Give it to God. Just give it to God. Just let it go. It brings peace and it brings healing, letting go. Peace and healing. Second thing is to let go of our attachments. Any control freaks in the house? Okay, apparently just 3 of us. Okay. But sometimes we are very attached to an outcome. We're very attached to ideas. We're very attached of how things are supposed to be done. I had no idea until I got married that there was a correct way to stack a dishwasher. There's only a right way, apparently, and I was doing it the wrong way. And the fact is, sometimes when we get welded to an outcome, we actually limit and inhibit and cut off the fullness of the expansiveness of the creative process. That yes, it's good to have a strong intention and a goal, but you need to open a space because Spirit might bring it forth in a different and more creative way than we actually thought it would be. Julia Cameron, who wrote The Artist's Way, said this: "The creative process is a process of surrender, not control." The more you let go, guess what? The more ideas, the more creativity, the more wisdom comes through us in amazing ways. Do you remember in the story of creation, what did God do on the 7th day? Rested. Like when you hold a prayer, you know what you got to do? Let it go. Just like a farmer plants a seed in the ground and just trusts that it's going to grow. A farmer doesn't plant a seed in the ground and think, I hope that soil is not slacking. I hope that fertilizer is doing its job. I hope the water's doing it and the sun. No, it doesn't. Plants and let go. That's a part of the creative process. It's a holy intention, then let it go so Spirit and the creative process can move through it. Third thing about letting go is sometimes you got to let go of the good for the great. John D. Rockefeller said, "Don't be afraid to give up the good to go for the great." He came from modest means. He co-founded Standard Oil, revolutionized the petroleum business, and also revolutionized philanthropy. He wanted to make 50 cents a day. He ended up making $100,000 a week back then. In fact, he became the first billionaire in this country, John D. Rockefeller. He could have stopped, but he kept moving and growing because as good as his life was, something in him, in his soul, called him to go for the greater, to go for the greater. And because he did, he ended up spending half of his life giving money away because he was called to do something greater. So I ask you, what in your life is good that your soul is saying, let it go and go for the greater? Because I bet every single one of us sometimes falls into a comfort zone where we feel safe and cozy, and our soul is calling us to do something, but we're afraid because we're saying, hey, I should be happy. Everything looks perfect. But sometimes our soul calls us to do something greater. And this is not about being reckless. It's about listening to what your soul is saying. That are you being called for something greater than what's going on in your life now? Are you being called to release something that's good, to move forward, to free yourself, to do something greater? And the fact is we need to listen. Letting go and surrendering is much more powerful of a creative source than we realize. It brings us peace from the things we hold on to. It lets go of our attachment to bring something greater, and it helps us let go of the good to rise to an even higher level. Surrendering is not losing something that's worthwhile, but it's getting rid of the things that stop us from allowing Spirit to flow through our lives in a greater and more prosperous way. The two most important things to deal with in life that are the hardest is how do you deal with people? And how do you deal with life when it ain't going your way? And with people, it's to realize we aren't separate. We're actually one. That everyone's here to teach us something, and we need to take responsibility to ask, what are they here to teach me, and why am I here to grow from them? And secondly, situations and goals in our lives that aren't working well, it isn't about forcing. Sometimes it's about letting go. It's about surrendering. Every one of us, we don't need to wish for a better life. We can just take the two most powerful principles, oneness and surrender, live them and embody them, and I guarantee you it will help us all live life more masterfully. God bless you all.